Hello and welcome to the HQ Movie Review Podcast. I'm Josh.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Brandon.
And this week we watched Snowpiercer.
And if you haven't heard of it, you're lucky.
I say watched. I prefer suffered.
It wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad.
Okay, it wasn't that bad. It just wasn't good.
No, I can't say it was good.
I mean, Rotten Tomatoes does disagree with us.
I have no idea.
Both.
That is a lie.
Rotten Tomatoes has been wrong about a lot of things before.
Someone hacked their site.
Rotten Tomatoes has the critic score for this in the 90s and the audience score at 72.
My personal score is somewhere in the 30s.
It's a solid, maybe 60. I'd give this a D.
Yeah.
Like a D minus.
It wasn't good.
Well, all right. So this story has a very, has a premise.
As do most stories.
Yeah.
It'd be wild if it was a story without one.
I was going to say interesting, but it's really not that interesting.
It is an interesting
No, yeah, I think
premise.
It has potential.
It's just, hey, what if global warming? And then also, what if train?
No, what if we overcorrected global warming?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, yes. What if we overcorrected global warming? And then what if everyone lived on a train? Which just brings about so many different complications.
Yeah, I mean, so what the actual backstory is behind this movie is in 2014, global warming and climate change was getting out of control. And so scientists developed this chemical, CW7. They said, hey, we'll put this in the atmosphere and it'll stop all the global warming. And they put it in the atmosphere and it froze the planet.
Yeah.
And then they got on a big train.
And then they got on a train.
So I like several of the ideas separately. Like, oh yeah, what if we fucked up the atmosphere and that means it changed the world? That's an interesting concept. You could do something cool with that. What if all of humanity had to live on some kind of ark? That's neat. This could have taken place in space, and that would have been a similar concept.
That would be WALL-E.
That would be WALL-E, in fact. I mean, no, WALL-E was a different
was
kind of
a pseudo-utopia.
Yeah.
This is very dystopia.
We should also point out, it is not all of humanity on this. It's maybe a couple thousand people on this train.
The implication is that the rest of humanity is
Yeah.
dead because none of the other trains are running.
Yeah. Therefore, what's left is just humanity.
That said, this train never stopped. There's no saying that there's not two other trains on different parts of the track. They just never contacted each other. It's not impossible.
True.
That said, based on the ending of the movie, they certainly will.
Yeah.
Or they'll die.
What I would think is that because on this train we do see a wide diversity of people from all across the planet, that it was just this one train.
Yeah, this was the arc.
Because they were also speaking different languages as well, so it was just, hey, you bought your ticket onto this train, come to wherever we're loading.
Also, I did find it funny that it was either English or some Asian language. I think there was once or twice where they might have spoke Spanish.
Yeah, the guy in the beginning when the woman's giving her monologue about punishing the tail passengers, he translates it to Spanish, but we never saw anyone else speak Spanish.
Yeah, and that was it. Those were the languages. Was several different forms of just Eastern languages.
We need to do more to establish the plot so our audience actually knows what the fuck is going on.
All right, yeah.
I mean, that was a lot. That was the premise. I guess the plot is that Chris Evans is a passenger in the back of the train, which is where all of the poor people are, and they're trying to get to the front of the train, where all the rich people are, to overthrow the corrupt government of the train.
Yeah.
Hilarity ensues.
Definitely not hilarity.
I mean, some of it was funny to us.
Yes, unintentional, a little bit.
It wasn't supposed to be.
There were some funny cuts.
Yeah.
Speaking of cuts, cinematography, I'd rate a C. It wasn't the worst, but it was certainly fairly difficult to follow in several instances. It wasn't Batman bad, though.
Yeah.
We need to stop grading things, or else people will think this is an actual movie review.
Yeah, shit, you're right. But I will tell you what was terrible. Sound design.
Oof. Yeah.
That was a big oof.
It was repetitive.
Yeah.
It was a lot of, hey, you ever want to hear silence and heartbeats for 3 minutes straight? No?
My favorite part was absolutely the fight scene where everything was muted except for Chris Evans grunting and a squish noise every time he hit someone with an axe.
It was so bad.
I was just about to bring that up.
Interesting choice. Very interesting choice.
And it went on for so much longer than I thought it was
Yeah.
going to. That was like a 4 or 5 minute scene of the axe fighting, and a solid half of that was just no noise, just quiet squishes.
Yeah. The camera was also completely focused on Chris Evans, so much so that there was nothing. We couldn't actually see what he was hitting with the axe, and we couldn't
Yeah.
see anything behind him. It was just his head and upper torso while he fought people.
Yeah, that was weird. That was also followed by the very weird decision with the night vision goggles. The very weird cinematography decision to make it go first person.
Yeah, because it also implied that there was one night vision guy who was just staring away from the action to look at the reaction of the evil lady in the front. Like, there were a lot of weird choices in this movie.
It made it feel like a weird horror movie in just that one sequence.
Yeah, it felt like the cinematic that happens before you enter like a Halloween Horror Nights area. It was very much like, here's our weird, scary premise. Whoa, no, there's crazy axe guys, and you're on a train. Anyway, here's the scare zone.
Yeah, it's one of the like original concepts, not the IP house.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was, I don't want to say it was interesting. I was not interested in most of this movie.
I think there were some interesting twists at the end.
Yeah.
I was not interested up until the point where we got to them. So, like, it didn't... I would have been upset if I had paid for a movie ticket to see this.
Oh, I would have been very upset. Like, I think the only twist at the ending that actually somewhat caught me off guard was at the end, Chris Evans' character, Curtis, tells his story about how when he first got on the train and how they weren't fed and basically had to resort to cannibalism.
All right, well, let's start at the beginning and work our way there.
Yeah.
You're jumping to the end. We have a process here.
I guess.
We have a process.
That's the only thing that I found that was like, oh, this is a twist.
Listen, I don't expect any of our viewers to watch this movie before listening to this once they know what movie it is. So I feel like we should take this in order of the movie.
That's fair. You know what? This is fair criticism.
Also, why would the twist be in the beginning, Josh? That doesn't make any sense.
The real twist in the beginning, John Hurt.
Yeah. I mean, also Chris Evans in not knowing Chris Evans was in this movie, he shows up and it's really dark, and I thought he was Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, it wasn't until he started speaking that I was like, oh shit, that's Chris Evans.
Yeah.
And even then, I wasn't 100% positive. I had to look it up.
Can't believe they got Johnny Storm for this movie.
Yeah. And then there's a scene like 15, 20 minutes into the movie where it's real dark, and I swore he looked exactly like Nick Cage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also like a weird like underlighting on his face, which really just made him look not like Chris Evans.
Yeah.
So my first note actually starts before any actors are on screen, and it's just that there's so many companies that made this movie.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So many logos in front of this movie, and I did not recognize like a good like third of them, if not half.
CinemaSins would have a field day with that.
Oh yeah, especially since after they do the individual logos for each company, they also show each company in the credits.
And then they show like what? They showed like the cinematographer in the opening credits as well.
And like the makeup department, and I was like, oh, these are not people who are usually in the opening credits. Good for them. Kind of weird to start out with. So, I really like that this movie was just like, oh yeah, they released it in the atmosphere with chemtrails.
Yeah.
That was kind of buck wild, actually.
Yeah, they just like, oh yeah, they put the CW7 in the atmosphere. And then they show planes with just like normal ass like trails.
The implication being, this movie is just full of choices, huh?
Yeah.
Speaking of choices, John Hurt with the umbrella hand. John Hurt is in this movie as this like old guy who's been in the tail for a while, and he's missing one arm and has replaced it with like an umbrella and a hook.
Like it's one of those like hook umbrellas.
Yeah, But there was another side
Yeah,
to
there was,
it,
like-
and I think it was like a clothing hook or something.
Yeah, they took like a wire hook and just kind of like wrapped it around and made it so it was like a double hook.
Yeah, and he's also missing one of his legs.
Yeah.
And he had an actual peg leg.
I mean, they go into why that is later, but it's fine. Honestly, that didn't bother me that much. It made sense. It's like, all right, well, we need to replace his hand. We don't have access to like an actual prosthetic hand, or like an actual like hook that people who would use, like, because there is an actual like hook prosthesis that people have. They don't have access to that. What they do have access to is this broken umbrella.
My point is, just don't give him anything. Why are you giving? I mean, the peg leg, I understand. He needs to walk. But a hook hand? Like, and having an umbrella attached to your, like, remaining bit of arm has to be less practical than just not having anything.
I can't imagine. It's a prosthetic. How is it less helpful?
Because it just gets in the way.
How would it
Do
get in
your
the way?
arms get
Yeah,
in
do
the
your
way?
arms get in the way? How would it get in the way more than having an arm?
Could you imagine trying to take off your fucking clothes and you fucking trying to take your shirt off and it's just like, well, guess it's just hooked onto my two
I can't
hooks
ima-
on my hand.
It's a big hook. You can just take it off around the... What are you talking
I also
about?
can't imagine they take off their clothes that much in the back. They don't have a place to shower.
Yeah, there's no reason to take off your clothing in the back of the
Yes,
train.
whatever. But like, the point is, it could get snagged on things. There's a lot of reasons it could be bad.
Yeah, I feel like you would just get used to having a hook there and move accordingly.
It's fucking terrible. It's a dumb idea. I hate it.
Well, now you're just nitpicking.
I am nitpicking. But anyway,
So they start this revolution.
So they start a revolution. The entire movie, they're being led by like these little like pill packets with with short red messages. The red message is usually like 1 or 2 words in like a little pill shoved in like a food block that they get, and then sometimes other things. But like the entire movie, they're being led by these red like messages. But really early on, it is implied. It's not implied. It is shown that like they regularly get these messages with hints about how to revolt through the little like protein blocks that they get for food. I want to know how they knew which one had the message in it.
They had to like search for it.
Right, but like you can't really. The block is really dark. You can't really see through it.
I think you could. Barely.
I want to say that I think it was just that everyone would get the blocks, and when they would see this, or when they would try to bite into this metal pill thing, they'd be like, "Ah, yes, give this to the leader."
I mean, maybe, but in the first one that they show us, it's the block of like a little kid who's just licking the end of the block, so he hasn't tried to bite into it. And we also saw that it was in the center of the block, so he would have gotten a couple bites in before he even found it. They just looked at his block and were like, "Yep, this is the one."
I think I might be remembering incorrectly, but I think when we end up seeing like the manufacturing of those gel blocks, you can see it like in the middle. It's either when they're making them or the one they get like right before the revolution starts. Because I know right before the revolution, the guy that gets it immediately, like when he turns around, he opens it up and then hands it off to the second-hand man.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Which that one pill they just never open up.
Yeah,
We just
wild.
don't know what was in that one.
They just went, "Oh yeah, we got one final message that's gonna tell us the thing," and then it was like, "No, we got to start the revolution now."
Yeah, look, there was a small window of time when all 3 doors were open.
Which, by the way, their barrel plan was fucking hilarious.
They just chained together a bunch of barrels to create a tunnel to the end, and it keeps all the doors open. So
Yeah,
It was effective, but hilarious.
I thought it was pretty clever.
Like, why do they all need to be together? Just put one at each door.
Well, the problem is that if you put one, there's only 4 seconds when all 3 doors are open. So if you put one barrel in one room and then have to run to the next one to put another barrel in, the last door is already closed by the time you're there. So it actually does make sense that they have this big, long train of barrels that they run through so that they have enough speed to get all the way to the end before they all close.
I guess that's fair. I was just thinking of like, hey, you take 4 people with 4 barrels. One person just runs to the end, and you just have one person drop off a barrel at each one.
They do also use it as like a tunnel for the badass
That
guy
one
from the back
badass
that
dude.
never speaks. He like pops out of the end of it.
I thought he jumped on top of it.
No, that was Edgar popped out.
Oh yeah,
Edgar crawled through. The badass guy ran across the top because
Yeah.
he was the boss encounter for the enemies. It's like, alright, you fought the first wave of regular dudes, now you have to fight me.
Also, there were so many people in this movie that just never got any lines. Like, there were so many roles in this movie that just had no speaking role.
but they were still
they
prominent
were-
characters.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was gonna say. They were prominent characters who never spoke or spoke like once.
Yeah.
Like there was one dude who was just fucking immortal.
Yeah. And that
What
dude
was his
said
deal?
one thing at the very end, and I don't even remember what he said.
No bullets.
That's right.
No bullets.
That was like this dude. He shows up in the first scene with like when all of the like riot cops come in and like force everyone down. He's there with like the lady who's in charge of the rear cars. He's there with her. Then like he's always looking menacingly at them, like he actively hates these people. And it's never delved into why he's so angry at them for just existing. And then he gets killed like 3 times, and he stays down for a while, and then he just gets back up and keeps going.
They even have like a whole like 10-second sequence of him dying while being stabbed in the side and also suffocated, and his head's like bulging and in like red, like he's suffocating and he's dead.
We
And you're
watched
like,
the light fade from his eyes.
this man is dead, and then 10 minutes later he just stands up like nothing happened, walks into the wall and goes, oh, that's right, I have a knife in the side of me.
And then he pulls it out and walks all the way to the front of the train to have a fist fight.
Like, this guy was actually just immortal.
Anyway,
So they use the barrels to
Yes.
make it through.
To
There were like 4 gates that they had to make it through, right?
and they make it to the prison.
yeah.
Was it the prison
Y-
first
yeah.
or the food first?
It's a prison because they have to unlock the door to the food and then they find the guy.
That's right. Okay, so they go to the prison because one of the red notes told them the name of someone who could open the doors for them.
And
They-
he's like in a morgue box.
yeah, real weird. I thought he was in like stasis for some reason. 'Cause,
No,
like
yeah.
they pull him out and he's just like
He's in solitary.
sleep. He's
Well-
just asleep. So I'm like,
What
wow,
else-
they have weird hibernation like stasis technology.
I mean, if you're in a morgue box, what are you gonna do but sleep?
I mean, yeah, I get it. I just was like, at the time, I was like, oh, they somehow developed stasis technology on this train in, like, with 2014 technology. But then, yeah, it just turned out that he was just asleep.
But yeah, so they wake him up. They're like, "Hey, we'll give you this drug that you were addicted to according to your files
Yeah.
if you take us to the front."
Addiction can be a powerful motivator.
And then he says, "No, give me double and my kid is coming with."
Which, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to point out that the drugs that they are offering him look like charcoal pieces.
Well, they're combustible.
And they're like, yeah, it's industrial waste that's just really combustible.
And you sniff it.
Yeah, and you sniff it and hallucinate. It's like, what the hell is this? Like, anyway, it'll come up later what it is, but yeah, it was a really weird drug to have in this.
I mean, I don't want to be the one defending the movie all the time, but they're on a train. There's not like a train car for producing drugs, so people are just gonna find something that gets them high.
Why not? They have a train car for everything else. They grow their like fruits and other stuff.
Right.
No,
They have a train car
could've
for
just grown anything. Shrooms, weed, fucking whatever.
Well, we need the plants for food. People will make do, and they did. You're being weirdly nitpicky about this movie. I didn't like it either, but like,
My problem with it is just the entire movie. All I could think of was like, how does the logistics of living in like a 12-foot wide section of space. It may be really long, but you can't pass by things. You have very limited resources. Like, how does this work? And that's my source of nitpicking of this movie. It's
I imagine it's a lot like living on a space station. Like, the actual space station is not very big. Also, the train is very inconsistent with how big it is. Like, there's the back cars are fucking huge. There's one car that's an aquarium, and it's like, well, how big is the aquarium around the little part they're walking through? Because they're walking under the aquarium.
And there's several times where, like, I swear, the width of the train is so narrow you could, like, reach out with your hands and touch both sides.
Like, there's sometimes where it's the width of a normal train, and there's sometimes where it's just like, this is a room. This is just a regular room. This is like Infinity Train meets Polar Express, but it's all bad.
Yeah.
So they get this guy, and his daughter can, like, know what's happening in the next car.
Yeah, is that ever explained?
No, yeah, they never, like, there's a shot where Curtis is like, are you clairvoyant? She's like, what does that mean? He's like, you always know what's happening in the next car. And then here's another instance of weird editing. It just jumps to them opening the next door, and she's like, yeah, I can see what's happening in the next car. And then we never go back to that, and they never explain how she could do that.
So
there's no magic in this world. Why could she see what was happening in the next car?
So this is one of the two things that are going to come from IMDb trivia for this podcast. According to the producers, they mentioned that she was a train baby. She was born on this train. She's 17 years old. The train is like 18 years old.
Yeah.
Supposedly, all the train babies developed a, like, hyper animalistic sense of hearing.
That's garbage.
So
it's a train.
She could hear what was happening in the next car.
If nothing else, her hearing should be worse because it's a train.
And that was supposedly implied when she said something about running before they opened the door to the food developing thing, and we immediately see the guy running.
Yeah, I thought that was the first instance of, like, hey, you're supposed to realize that she's, like, clairvoyant for some reason.
Yeah, nothing about that implied sound.
Yeah.
Also, it's not a TARDIS.
No, yeah, she just
Being
heard it.
conceived on the train does not give you train superpowers. What is this? Why were none of the other children clairvoyant?
Just buck wild.
That is absolutely crazy. And I, honestly...
And they never went into it.
Like, I just completely forgot that was a thing because of the wild shit that happens at the end. And I just didn't even think about, we never, like, you know, tied that loose end up. That was just left as, hey, yeah, she can just see through walls.
You know, that actually was one of my notes from the end of the movie, because I was just like, hey, are we ever going to come back to this? And we don't.
Nope. It really does, like, we had absolutely no idea why she could do any of this until I read that IMDb fact. I'm like, oh, that's why? How would that even work? You grew up on a train, so you can hear really well. If anything, it should be the opposite.
Yeah. You grew up on a train, so you're permanently deaf.
I see, like, the circular track of the train. We're going to circle back to that joke I made, like, a minute ago.
Yes.
Cool, good.
So, she clairvoyantly can just predict that on the other side of this door is something bad. So she's like, hey, don't open the door. As he opens the door, and then there's just
a bunch of goons.
Weird ass people wearing ski masks with the eye holes around their mouths.
Some of them had them around the eyes.
Some of them were wearing them properly, some of them were not.
Like 3 out of the group were wearing them properly, and I swear that was just the extras going, I refuse to do this.
Maybe.
You know, another weird future culture. This movie takes place in 2031. Maybe that's how people dress in 10 years.
It's freaking so dumb. They just, it opens up and it's like, they're supposed to be intimidating with, you know, axes and stuff. And it just held on them for so long. It was like showing you, it's like, yeah, yes, they're wearing these masks and they have axes, and then they just stared at each other.
Yeah, it just cut
Yeah.
back and forth. It's like, here's them, here's our guys, here's them again,
Well,
He
and
looked
then
at him.
they
He looked at me.
and then they. Good, solid. Weird Al accurate. And then they took out a fish,
Yeah, oh my god, yeah.
yes.
and
that never came back.
So
well, no, the fish did come back.
yeah, fish.
Oh, yeah.
So for the guys take out a fish, and like one guy cuts it open with his axe, and then the next guy like takes his axe and dips it in the fish, and they just kind of pass the fish around after that.
Yeah.
And that never came up again.
Yeah,
Why?
the blood on the axes, never, not a thing. It wasn't poisonous. It wasn't anything. It was just like, oh yeah, here's the thing we're gonna do.
Gotta do some extra fish damage.
And the only fish damage that came out of it was Chris Evans slipping on the fish.
Yeah, no, at the end of that fight, it's a climactic moment. Chris Evans is running towards like the woman who controls all the goons, and he steps on the fish and he falls over backwards, and then somebody tries to like axe him in the head, and he just rolls out of the way and gets back up and starts running again. It's like, hold on, why was that there?
So, this is the other thing that's in IMDb.
It's not
Oh,
where I thought
good.
that was coming in. Okay.
I know, right? So the director, I'm probably gonna butcher his name, but it to me it seems like it should be Bong Joon-ho, right? He
Okay.
clashed with a producer who was Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Good. We should all
Um,
clash with him.
Harvey Weinstein frequently interfered to try to demand like his version of the film because he's obviously the more experienced between the two, but the guy's the director because it's like his story or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Harvey Weinstein insisted that the fish scene was removed, that they just got to the fight, right?
Okay.
And then the director said that it was very personal and it was a tribute to his father who was a fisherman. Somehow,
Interesting.
right? And then Harvey Weinstein is like, oh, family's very important to me. I see that it's important to you. We'll keep it in. And then after the movie came out, in an interview, the director said, that was a fucking lie. My dad's not a fisherman. I just wanted to keep that in the movie.
Oh my goodness.
He's just like, yeah, no, my dad's a fisherman, so we gotta keep it. And then later he's like, nah, I just lied to him. Actually, here's our patented Star Wars,
Oh good.
Oh,
our
God.
Star Wars sidetrack. One of my favorite things that I've just learned is that during the production of the prequels, Steven Spielberg was supposed to like direct some of the scenes for those movies, and George Lucas used that to his advantage by like anytime he wanted to like do a scene and that people would push back on him, he would just say that Steven wanted to do that scene, so people wouldn't
Wow.
argue about it.
That's great.
Yeah, no, that's a fun thing that I've learned recently. He's just like, yeah, no, Steven wants to do this, and they're like, okay. And when people liked it, and he was like, yeah, that's why I hired him. It's amazing.
That's hilarious. So yeah, they fight all these guys with axes and everything. And eventually they kidnap the woman who was like controlling them and punishing them if they did something wrong.
And then they spare all of the guys with axes who were just gleefully murdering them.
Which is the dumbest thing.
Yeah, including the immortal.
Yeah, well, we don't know he's immortal yet. He's just some weird, like, middle-aged man with them.
Yeah.
Who really doesn't look like he should be able to fight that well.
He's like
Yeah.
got like thinning hair and a beer gut, and it just looks like he's in his 50s. And it's just like, okay, this guy's like an administrator. He's not a fighter. And then it turns out he's like the best fucking fighter.
This dude was the best fighter that the front carts had. Just some, like, middle-aged guy. But also, I just really like the mental image, like, Josh, you brought this up during the movie, of, like, all of those, like, axe goons. The cars immediately in front of them were, like, the water car, and then the plant car, and then, like, a school.
Well, there was a butcher car.
There was a butcher car as well.
Well, that was
That's
after
where
the
they-
school.
That was after the school, I think.
Was it?
Yes.
So, like, those guys who probably came from the butcher car had to walk through like the aquarium and the greenhouse and all of these really nice, like, these were like video game goons, and they just walked through all these really nice cars to get to the back so they could fight some dudes. Had they been successful, they would have just walked back through all of these places covered in blood.
Well, no, they were in the water car. They would have washed out.
That's right. The next room was the water car. They would have just showered off. Still, it's really funny to me that, like, sometimes I think the filmmakers forgot that this is a train and there's only one entrance and exit to every room.
I will say that was one of the most entertaining aspects of the movie, was just thinking about, like, okay, so we just saw a school. Where do they live? And how many different cars do they have to go to get to school?
Yeah, because we don't see, aside from the back of the train where all the, they're essentially homeless people live, we don't see a single living quarters, like a single train with like actual beds.
There was one point where they were like, there's all these beds and this food is just on the tables.
Yeah, I think that was implied that it was like, that's the
like that was the
guards.
Yeah, that was like the economy class.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like all of the rich people, we don't know where they live.
There were a lot of like just individual cabins, and some of them were just people knitting, but another one of them was just like a dentist office.
Yeah. I
And a
figured that was like
tailor.
a service area. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, here's all of our shops.
Here's our strip mall.
But yeah, like at no point do we see like regular housing. And so it is really unclear. I assume we skipped it for time.
Yeah.
But it is very unclear where anyone lives, especially these children who, like, right after their car was like the party car. No, it was like a fancy bar, and then a salon, and then a rave, and then a drug den. It's like, all right, well,
Yeah.
how far away did these kids live? I don't think there was a jump cut between these two things.
I feel like the biggest thing is that we saw a butcher car. We saw like a full ass cow carcass.
Yeah.
Where the fuck were the live cows?
Yeah, there were like a bunch of pig faces hung on the wall. Where are they keeping these pigs? Where's the livestock car?
I wish we would have counted how many different cars we actually saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they definitely skipped a lot. In fact, there's this one scene where they're like going around a corner, like the train is making a turn.
Yeah.
right?
So they get after like they kidnap the people and they tie up the goons. They go. This is after the school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they have the guns now.
Yeah. So when they kidnap. Okay, so after the axe, fight with all the weird ski masks over mouth people.
Yes.
They kidnap the one lady that's kind of in charge of the tail of the train people.
Yeah.
And they have her like lead them through the rest of the train, and then they get to a school, and then they just kind of stop there for some reason and let them just talk.
They're dumbfounded by how creepily indoctrinated these children are, and how bold these kids are to like shit talk these grimy adults standing among them.
Yeah.
Like at one point, this girl gets up and she's like, "Well, I heard that everyone at the back of the train is lazy, good for nothing." And it's like, yo, they're right there. You saw this woman walk in with a machete and you don't care?
Yeah, I was dumbstruck by the fact that it's like, you are enacting a revolution. Why are you stopping here? Get going. But then they end up stopping there for long enough that they come out with like eggs, boiled eggs.
The New Year's Eve eggs.
Yeah, weird twist there, but okay.
There's a lot of like intricate like lore things that happen that we're not going to talk about, and that does almost justify the like, because they pass over a bridge that marks like hey, it's the anniversary, Happy New Year. This is the bridge that we count our years with, because it takes a year to make it all the way around the track. So like, hey, it's the new year. They get to the classroom, they wait for a stupid amount of time, and then they bring out like the New Year's tradition is here's these eggs that are boiled in water from the engine or whatever.
And it's literally a wheelbarrow filled with hard-boiled eggs.
Yeah. And that was weird, but that's a weird New Year's tradition. Apparently, I don't know. It doesn't matter because actually that guy was smuggling in guns to kill the insurgents. Whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. So anyway, now there's guns.
Now there's guns.
Because prior to this,
With bullets.
yeah, prior to this, they're like, ah, yes, they ran out of guns at the last, or they ran out of bullets in the last revolution 4 years ago. They don't have any bullets. And then, surprise, surprise, they have bullets.
I mean, they were right. Initially, they did not have bullets.
Yeah.
And then, so after that, after the school, they just kind of skip ahead a ton of train cars. I mean, they're going around this big wide turn.
At one point, the guy in the back who is the immortal that we mentioned before, the guns get back to him. He frees all of the axe murderer dudes who were being held captive, and they just slaughter everyone in the back of the train, basically, or almost everyone. And then he gets to a window, and he is far enough away from our protagonist, Chris Evans, that he can point his gun through the window. He shoots a hole in the window, points his gun out, and shoots across the gap to the part of the train where Chris Evans is in, because they're so far apart that going around this curve, their cars are parallel.
And they remain parallel, which is not possible.
Yeah,
For a very long time.
They have a whole shootout. They have to reload and then start shooting again before their cars are in line again because the train has stopped turning.
Also, the Immortal has this AR-15 with a red dot scope, and he's still missing his shots because this is long range. And then Chris Evans stole what looks like, I don't know, maybe an Uzi of some kind, some submachine gun that is very, very much a close quarters weapon.
They're both shooting at each other across a vast distance and missing terribly. And then the final instance of this gunfight is they both shoot one bullet across the train. The bullet impacts the glass in front of their face, the other one's face. It doesn't break the glass, it just kind of impacts it. So they both shoot one bullet, be like, I could have shot you in the head. And then they just stop, and the train stops turning, and they keep going. And that was it. That's how that gunfight ends. It's very weird.
Yeah, it was wild.
Especially since when the guy first started shooting, he shattered the glass instantly.
Yeah, and the second he starts shooting, they're ducking for cover because the bullets are just flying right through the car, the glass and going all over the place inside the car.
It is also important to note that for some reason this one car they happen to be walking through is nothing but window.
Oh yeah.
This car is a flat platform with giant floor to ceiling windows and nothing else in it. And it's just this one car they happen to be walking through. I don't know why.
And then, so as soon as the gunfight ends, they're like, well, we gotta catch up. And then they caught up.
Yeah. The gunfight ends, Chris Evans and his group start walking, the Immortal guy and his group start walking, and they catch up to them immediately. They're 2 cars away all of a sudden.
They had to have been 30 cars away in order to make that kind of parallel cars thing happen with the turn. And then 10 seconds go by. Actual real life 10 seconds, and they're just right behind them.
And they're in a sauna.
And then they're in a sauna.
Oh yeah. I'm not sure if it was sauna or it was showers. I don't know.
It was a sauna. There was lady just sitting in one of the booths steaming.
I guess, yeah. But it was real weird. It reminded me a bit of the the Duel of Fates type thing in episode 1, where they have these weird corridors that they have to stop in.
Yeah, with the gray shields.
But it was just orange, and it was a very narrow hallway.
Yeah. Also, there weren't energy shields.
Yes, there were no energy shields.
Visually, I know why it reminded you of that, but this description does nothing for anyone who doesn't know what that scene looks like.
That's
and it's
true.
probably more confusing than less.
Fair.
So they're in the sauna.
They're in the sauna.
So anyway, the Immortal shows up.
And he's just killing. Like, he shoots the door, opens it. It's like, whoops, that wasn't one of them. The two guards he's with, like, hey, you just killed a front passenger. And then he kills them.
Well, yeah, he wasn't going to get snitched on.
Like, this dude is like, I will kill as many people as I have to. As long as my enemies are one of them. Like, I don't know what his deal. He hated those rear car passengers.
Real quick, I did look on IMDb. This man's name is Franco the Elder. we've been calling him like the Immortal this whole time. No, his name is Franco the Elder.
I'm sorry, he's just immortal to me.
But yes, he shoots a front passenger and then kills two soldiers to be like, you ain't snitching on me.
No, my favorite part of that one is like he kills the first soldier and he turns around and the other one's like, I didn't see anything. Like he literally says that in the movie.
And yeah, they try to fight this guy that's immortal.
Yeah.
And he beats everyone. Like at one point, he is like the other soldier's dead. It's just him versus like Chris Evans and the badass dude, and also like the mom of a kid who was kidnapped at the beginning of the movie. Who she really probably shouldn't have gone with them after all, but it's fine, whatever. But like, he takes on like this whole squad, plus like the lockbreaker guy and his daughter, and no one can take this guy. Like takes down that entire crew, and is only taken down because like the daughter was hiding behind someone in a sauna, and while he was about to kill her, her dad walked up and like attacked him from behind. And even then, it took those two and Chris Evans, who was waking up from being knocked out earlier in the fight, to stab him in the side and choke this guy out so he died. And then he didn't die. He just
came
woke
back.
up later.
Like 10 minutes later, he just wakes up like nothing happened.
Like it's baffling how much of a juggernaut this man is for no good reason.
Yeah, you've got the clairvoyant child and the juggernaut. That's never explained.
Yeah, no.
This also just happens to take place in a world where there's the like mutants are first starting to show.
Yeah, this takes place. This is a spin-off of the X-Men, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, at this point, it's just Chris Evans,
Yep.
the security guy, and his daughter.
Yeah.
Everyone else has died along the way.
So.
And then they go through like a few more like relatively unimportant cars.
The Rave Room.
Yeah, this is where they go through the Rave Room.
The rave and the drug rooms.
Yes, where the security guy, who has been like, from the beginning, they were like, "Hey, we'll pay you drugs for every door you open." He goes through the Rave Room and the drug room and steals all of the drugs in both of those rooms and keeps going and then they're at the front of the train. The Rave Room is right next to the very front of the train. There's nothing between those two rooms. At one point, we can see from the engine room through the little, like, there's one room with a bridge, and that's it. There's the engine room where Wilford, the leader of the train, lives.
I think the order was Rave Room, drug pits, then that bridge room.
Yes, and then the engine.
And then the engine, and that's it. There's nothing between those two rooms. At one point, we can see clear through from the front of the train to the drug pit room. Why are these two things next to each other?
Yeah, it was real weird.
And then they have a talk.
Yeah. So now you start getting to the twists.
Yeah.
So Curtis wants the door to the engine opened so that he can go kill Wilford.
Wilford being the engineer of all of the suffering on the train.
The guy who made the train in the first place.
Yeah. And runs it with his weird cult. It is.
It's
They're
absolutely.
like, no, Wilford could, like, the kids in the classroom were like, yeah, Wilford could see the future, and he knew that the W7 was going to freeze the world, so he built this amazing train. And anyone who doubts him is a non-believer. And if the train stops, we die. If we open the doors, we die. And they chant that several times. Anyway, Wilford's leading the cult.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is aware and very cool with it, and he's also just actively engineering the struggles in the back of the train. And this is when, like, before he gets there, this is when Chris Evans reveals his dark backstory, which I'd like to say I did call it on the cannibalism, but I called it in the wrong spot.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. Earlier on in the movie, we see them eating these, like, protein, like,
Gel.
gel bars.
Yeah. The things they were hiding, the pills with the notes in them.
Right. And as we know of mysterious gel bars of protein, that could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
So from the beginning of the movie, I'm like, hey, there's probably some cannibalism going on here. Unintentional cannibalism. Now, I was wrong about that. When they get to the food car, they see that, like, the protein is actually just it's just a bunch of CG cockroaches being ground up.
Was it cockroaches or like locusts or grasshoppers?
I thought they were roaches. I don't know. They're
bugs.
brown CG bugs. They're being ground up and turned into jelly patties for people to eat.
Speaking of CG, I'm not going to harp on it like I normally do, but I do have to say it was absolutely dog shit. It was terrible. Anyway.
Yeah, it was not good.
Every instance. Looking outside was horrible.
Yeah, that was just like a video game.
Anyway, so bugs. They're eating bugs.
Yeah, so the protein patties, actually bugs. Where the fuck they get all of these bugs from, I have no idea. Because that, at the rate they're grinding those things up, I feel like they might run out. Like, I don't know where the bugs are coming from. But, beside the point, that, not cannibalism. Then Chris Evans is like, well, yeah, but the first 2 months we were on the train, there was some light cannibalism.
There was no food, so then we resorted to cannibalism, and then he goes on this like long story about like he's like, I know what people taste like, and it was real bad, real fucked up. And then,
It's important to know.
Babies taste the best.
Babies taste the best.
Yeah, that's uh-huh. So anyway, he starts telling the story of like how Gilliam kind of like changed up everything by like sacrificing his limbs for hungry people to eat.
Yeah. It's also important to note that earlier on, Gilliam, John Hurt's character, and Curtis have this conversation where Gilliam's like, you should lead everyone, you're the leader. And Chris Evans is like, how can I lead when I have 2 arms? And they don't really explain that until the end. And that's a really stupid thing to say without explanation.
I completely forgot about that.
Right? Yeah.
And like it makes so much more sense now.
But in the moment, it's just a funny thing. Like, what? You expected me to take that seriously until the end of the movie?
Like, he's like, how could you expect me to lead when I have 2 arms? And then he rolls up his sleeve and shows like a scar, and I'm like, what the fuck is that mean?
And then Gilliam says this weird thing about, like, well, having 2 arms is better for some things. Like when you're holding a lady. And then they just stop talking. And that was the end of that conversation. I think that was the last time they spoke.
That was the last
time they talked to each other. So anyways, Curtis is telling a backstory where like they murdered this woman and took the child, and then John Hurt comes up and cuts off his arm and is like, eat this instead.
Yeah. Specifically, he frames it in that they're all unknown people. There was a woman and a baby and an old man and a guy with a knife. And the man with the knife killed the woman and took the baby, and the old man cut off his, like he said, give me the knife. He cut off his own arm and said, here, eat this and give me the baby instead. And then after this very 4chan-esque story, he goes, and Gilliam was the old man, and Edgar was the baby, and I was the man with the knife.
So it's just like Chris Evans raised this guy to be his second-hand man,
Yeah,
who ends up getting murdered like early on in
yeah.
their revolution fight.
Yeah.
Like
Gets murdered in the axe room.
And he reveals to us that man, Chris Evans, almost ate that man as a baby.
Now,
And it also, Chris Evans ate Gilliam's arm.
Yeah, I know.
Was the he
well,
almost,
we don't know that they continued with that because
They did. They
Yeah.
said it was another month before they got food.
fair.
Yeah. So, because after that, after Gilliam cut off his arm, everyone started like cutting off limbs to feed each other instead of eating children, which is also why Gilliam has like the peg leg, and it explains why Chris Evans having 2 arms makes him unsuitable as a leader because he couldn't make the sacrifice.
There's one other thing I want to point out that I read on IMDb, and this wasn't a fact. This was in their like goofs section, so things that they fucked up.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Edgar has an Irish accent.
Yes.
Huh?
Edgar was raised by Gilliam and Curtis.
Yeah.
Neither of whom have Irish accents.
Yeah,
Man,
amazing, huh?
Shit's genetic.
No one else in the film has an Irish accent.
Yeah, it's wild.
This man is a train baby that developed an Irish accent naturally.
Yo, wait, hang on. If he's a train baby too, why couldn't he hear through walls?
Exactly.
Well, okay, he might not have been fully a train baby, right? Because this was only a month or 2 in.
He wasn't
Okay.
conceived on the train.
Yeah.
Your parents have to have conceived you on the train for you to get hearing abilities.
It's like a TARDIS. You have to be conceived on the train, otherwise it doesn't count.
That is really a dumb thing that they did in Doctor Who. Like, yeah, if you fuck in the TARDIS, it makes a Time Lord.
Yeah, it makes a human with Time Lord powers. Wild how that works. It's also wild to think that, like, it's we're not. I was just gonna get into Doctor Who stuff at that point. I like River Song. I think her origin is crazy. Is a crazy time travel.
Yeah.
thing.
The only water in the forest is the river.
Oh my god.
Also, they named her after herself.
Yeah, they really did.
Oh my goodness. Anyway.
This is the first time we've brought up Doctor Who on the show, isn't it?
Yes,
I think it is actually.
So after he finishes telling the security guy his whole like story of cannibalism and stuff,
He also wastes the last cigarette on Earth.
yeah, by not smoking it
Yeah,
or anything,
the
just
guy
holding it.
gives him the cigarette, lights it, and is like, "Hey, be grateful. That's the last one on Earth." Chris Evans holds the cigarette, tells that entire story, and then we cut back to the cigarette, and it's fucking gone. It is like it's burned out as he held it.
And then so security guy starts telling his story about how he wants to just go live outside
Yeah.
where it's freezing, and Chris Evans' character is just like, are you fucking stupid? What is?
To be fair, that guy has been noticing things all movie that the movie just didn't explain to us.
Yeah.
And then when they go back and explain it, it's like, oh yeah, no, we pass by here every year, and every year I look out there, and that plane that was frozen up to the tail is now like almost like thawed out. And there was an Inuit woman on this. There was one Inuit woman on this train who taught me how to recognize the different kinds of snow, and I could see that the snow outside is the kind of snow that's about to melt, but it just needs to like avalanche or something.
Yeah. It's like shown that there were people that got out at one point, but they froze within like 30 seconds.
Yeah, they did not make it very far from the train.
But now, supposedly, it's getting warmer outside according to the security guy.
Yeah.
And so what he wants to do at the front is he wants to blow up the gate to the outside when Curtis wants to blow up the gate to the engine.
No, Curtis wanted him to open the gate
Well,
to the
yeah,
engine.
open
He
it.
wanted to
Right.
blow up the gate to the outside. I think we could have done both of those things.
In fact, we did.
We
Which-
did, but not the way we wanted to.
It's worth mentioning, the drug that he had been asking for the whole time was actually an explosive
Yeah.
that he was going to
It
use
was
to blow up
just
the gate.
C4. They're getting high on C4.
Yeah, he hadn't been like snorting it or whatever. He was just like collecting it in his pockets until he had a big brick of it that he could use to blow up the door.
You say
Probably-
brick. They looked like little charcoal nuggets, and then he just goes, yes, and grabs them, and then it's just Play-Doh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, because the first time they did it, he like crushed it and it was like kind of dust.
Yeah.
And then after that, he just kind of smushed it together and is like, all right, well, now it's not. Although I guess
Now-
if it is a powdery substance and you smush it together, you can just smush it into a bigger powdery block.
Yeah. And they just spit on it or something.
Yeah. But basically, when it was time for it to be an explosive, it was basically just green C4.
Yeah.
And he went, ah, yes. Except it was C4 that was actually, like, would explode with flames and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
C4 needs blast cast.
Like he stuck a fuse. He made it into a block. He just stuck a fuse into it, and then later they just lit the fuse like with a match, and
Yeah.
it made a huge explosion that caused an avalanche and derailed the train.
Yeah.
There's things that happened before that. We need
There
to
are
get to
things
those
happened
things.
before that.
Yes. So anyway, they finally, while all that's happening, he's like sticking the explosive on the door frame. Just one of the ladies that showed up at the very beginning of the movie that we didn't even talk about, but she shows up in the movie in the very beginning and like just takes a couple of children off to the front for just no real reason. And anyway, so this same lady opens that door and just has a pistol and shoots the security guy in the back, and then goes, well, come on in, Curtis.
Mr. Wilford wants to have dinner with you.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, well, okay.
Also
and,
important to note, the daughter of the security guy, who is clairvoyant, did actually do some of the drugs when they passed through the Rave Room. And so at this point, she is just randomly passed out on the floor.
Yeah.
And she stays passed out until the plot needs her to come back again.
She also grabbed a bottle of wine from someone.
Yeah.
yeah.
So she was just drinking
Yeah.
wine and sniffing drugs.
This 17-year-old kid is crossfaded and just like passes out on the floor. And the plot just kind of forgets about her until we need her to come back into it.
It was really just like the director went, what do we do with this character while we're waiting? You know what? She's passed out.
She's asleep.
She'll just be there.
Just taking a nap.
So we finally get into the engine room, and it's this just very.
And it's Gene Wilder. It's not actually Gene
It's not
Wilder.
Gene Wilder.
But it's just this like very minimalistic room with just the end of it is just this glowing Stargate looking just
Thing.
tube, and that's apparently the engine for this train. And I don't know how that works, but it's
eternal
some
engine.
it's some magic engine. I'm not gonna question. It's fine. So they get in, and you finally meet Wilford, right? He's just this old dude, he's just there. And then he just starts talking about this, like, whole society of the train and
like,
everything.
Yeah, and he's like, there needs to be an order, and people need to be put in their place.
Yeah. Everyone has a place, and everyone has a station, and they need to stick to it.
Yeah. And they're very, very repetitive with the word choice in their slogans that they just keep repeating. Very cult-like.
Well, I mean, you know how much trains and stations go together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was probably intentional, is what I'm saying.
Yes. Anyway, so they start talking about stuff, and basically it's revealed in this conversation that the entire time the plan was that this was supposed to happen.
Yeah, the insurrection was planned by this guy and Gilliam from the back of the train. They were working together to have a failed insurrection to lower the population so that they didn't have to just come back and shoot people. Because everything needs to remain in equilibrium. We can only have so many humans on the train. And then he's like, but you know what? Curtis, you did such a good job getting here. We didn't expect you to get this far.
And I'm getting old.
Do you want my job?
Yeah.
Do you want to take over the chocolate factory, Curtis? It was a Willy Wonka gambit the whole time.
Yeah, it was wild. It was like, yes, the guy that, from the story 5 minutes ago who, like, sacrificed limbs and stuff to make a slightly better place back there. Yeah, he's actually been working with me the entire time to, like, weed out the population.
Yeah. We orchestrated this. We orchestrated everything. But I did have to kill him because you were too good at insurrectioning. Whoopsie doodles, that's your fault.
It was just such a weird, bizarre twist to be like, yes, this guy that You know, you've built up to be like this good guy. He's really old, but like super well respected in the
Stands
in
for
the pack.
people.
Yeah, he's just this good guy. And in the last scene in the train, you just be like, oh yeah, he was totally working with me the entire time,
Yeah.
and then I killed him.
Anyway, you want my job?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's just so weird.
Like, why would he think that he would take the job? You just killed half of the people that he knew as family.
But the
Also-
movie wanted to make you seem like
It was a choice.
yeah, like, oh, he's debating, because he just sat there without speaking for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
staring at nothing. Like, oh, I have this huge moral dilemma.
Like-
do I do it or do I not? It's like, I'm sorry, everyone you've known and loved has died in this failed revolution, and you're considering replacing the guy that you did all this to kill?
Also, it's important to note that the people who didn't die, who didn't participate in the revolution, were gunned down, and Curtis heard this over the phone because during their conversation, Wilfred called the back of the train to the gunmen he had, like counting them. He's like, "Hey, yeah, I'm here with Curtis. You can we're at like what, 47%? Yeah, go ahead and call them. Just kill them.
Yeah. Just
Spare 18 people for the 18th anniversary of the train as a treat." And then he holds the phone up so Curtis can hear the gunshots as that man murders the innocents at the back of the train.
and that's not the point at which he stops considering this.
Yeah, and up until this point, he's still considering it. Like, once Yona, that's the daughter's name.
Yeah.
Once Yona finally wakes up from her random drug coma, she gets the bomb, puts it back on the door, runs into the front to get the matches from Curtis, and Curtis stops her like, no, we don't need to. No, it's okay. And she uses, I guess, her super hearing, which, this does actually explain how she knew. So, after he says no, she looks on the ground, she's like, wait a minute. She, claws up one of the tiles on the floor, and there's one of the kidnapped children from earlier under the floorboards of this, room, sticking his hand in, part of the train to scoop out, gunk. And the explanation that Wilfred gives is oh yeah, this engine is eternal, but its parts aren't. So, one of the parts broke, and we didn't have any more of them. So we just kidnap 5-year-old children every once in a while and stick them down the floorboards to do this thing. Luckily, the back of the train is a good source for children,
Yeah.
is a thing this man says.
Real fucked up.
And up until that point, Curtis was still on board with taking over his job.
Yeah. It was only when he said those words that Curtis is like, no, this is a bad idea.
Oh, this is wrong.
And so at this point, Curtis sticks his hand down that tile after beating up Wilfred.
Yeah, he punches Wilfred a bunch of times.
You
And
stick-
then, he sticks his hand in there and gets it, wedged.
just so that they can save that kid. And then him sticking his hand in there shuts off the engine because it got wedged and parts stopped moving. And then the engine comes forward, and the other kid that was kidnapped at the front steps out and crawls into the engine.
I think it's also important to note here, that kid wasn't just in the room. He was in a bookshelf.
Yeah, he was
Crawls
just
out of a bookshelf for some reason.
He crawls out of a bookshelf and into the engine. Meanwhile, Curtis is saying hey, don't fucking do that.
Yeah. This kid who's been kidnapped for all of a day, this kid's already, hypnotized. He doesn't say anything. He just gets out. He crawls out of the bookshelf, goes up to the engine as it opens up, a slot for him to, crawl inside. He crawls into the engine, and then the engine just closes. And, what? Why did Curtis stopping that gear cause that to happen? What does that do? What?
And then it just sucks back inside, and we never see the kid again.
Why was he in the bookshelf? There was a lot.
And then, isn't it after that the gears turn hard enough that it cuts off his hand?
Yeah, it
Right?
cuts off his
Yes.
arm, which is good for you, I guess. You got your arm cut off. Except at that point, the kid who was in the floor is already out. His arm was just stuck down there, and he couldn't get out. So cutting off his arm is symbolic but meaningless.
And then, so the security guy, this whole time, after he woke up, has been fighting all the rave people that he stole drugs from, and fucking Franco the Elder.
The immortal. Who came back to life and walked through the crowd of rave people and then just immediately starts fighting the security guy.
No, hold on. He gets to the front of the rave people. Yona sees him, picks up a gun, tries to shoot him, and empties the gun, shooting all around him, but not him. Like, this dude, like, magnetically deflects bullets or something.
Like, he
she
stood
is,
there,
like, 15 feet away from him, and she can't hit him. She headshots a dude behind him, can't hit him, and then he says his only line in the movie,
No bullets.
no bullets. Yeah, it's
Also in a
no
really
bullets.
much higher pitched voice than I was expecting.
Yeah.
It was very much like, no bullets. And I'm just like, what the fuck was that? And then he proceeds to start fucking fighting the security guy.
He pulls out the machete that he was impaled with, and they just have a fight for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, because I'm
In
pretty
the
sure.
back, because that happens while Curtis is making his choice.
Yeah, this is before the floorboard has been opened up. This is before the moral dilemma has been solved in Curtis's head. All of the rest of the events we just talked about happen while this fight is happening. And then after Curtis gets his arm cut off, he stands up and, like, the fight finally finishes.
Yeah. And just as it's finished, Yona, who has gotten the matches from Curtis, has lit the bomb. And so she runs back into the engine room, and then her dad sees the explosive, and in that moment it clicks in his head, oh, I have put too much explosive in this explosive. So he runs to go shield Yona and the kidnapped kid who's not in the engine. And then the biggest explosion happens.
Well, alright, so he put the explosive on, Yona lights it, and he's like, alright, we'll go into the engine room and shut the door. He tried to shut the door, and for some reason it was broken. And I don't know why, because nothing at this point had damaged the door.
Well, the engine was breaking down because they took the kid out, so the gunk wasn't being removed.
But why does that damage the door? Was the door, like, it had power, it sparked.
My assumption was that because he had to have Yona open the door while he was fighting off, like, all of the ravers, she's not as experienced as he was, so she just kind of broke it when she opened it.
Ah, okay, alright, that would make sense. But anyway, he tries to close the door before the blast happens, and the door just sparks and does not close. And he sees this and just goes, welp, guess we're all dead. So he just kind of jogs up to his daughter, Curtis, and the child from the floorboards, and they just kind of hug it out.
And then the explosion happens, and it rips through the train. It causes an avalanche of the snowy mountains next to them. The entire train is derailed. Half of it falls off of a fucking cliff. The back half of the train.
Yeah.
Those were the people they were trying to save. That half of the train falls off a cliff. A quarter of it gets cut off as it goes into, like, a tunnel crooked. So that part of the train rapidly stops. All the people in that part of the train are dead. The people in the front part of the train, like, that tumbles, and no, I don't think anyone survived this crash except for Yona and that, like, 5-year-old kid.
Yeah. And fun fact, Curtis is shown in one shot after his arm is cut off, and it's the hugging shot. You can't see his arm, and then he's just not that he's gone. After the accident, don't show his body, don't show anything. He is gone.
Yeah.
Security guy and Curtis disappear.
There's 2 children, though. It's spotless.
Yeah. Like, they make it through the explosion and the subsequent crash and all the tumbling they're in. Curtis,
Literally not even a scratch.
yeah, and then just get up and
Curtis's body is gone.
go. Yeah.
And then they're wearing these big-ass poofy coats.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they go outside and it's like, oh, cool, they didn't immediately freeze to death. So the other guy was right.
Except now there's only 2 people, and it's the 17-year-old girl and this 5-year-old, and they're staring at a polar bear in the distance, and that's where the movie ends.
It's like, yes, you're in a snowy wasteland, possibly the last 2 humans in existence, and there's a predator.
We did it. Yay.
Did we miss any notes, Jack?
I did write down that the entire track is 438,000 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
Which I just thought that was neat.
I want to see if that could be actually accurate.
Well, okay, so we know one
it doesn't go
lap
around
is a year,
Yeah,
right?
1 lap's a year, and it's not like a circle around the globe. It's like a weird squiggly thing that just kind of passes over all of the continents and then doubles back. Like, it definitely probably would have been easier to just go around the other side. Like, if you're already crossing an ocean, you could probably just go around the other side.
So how many kilometers?
438,000.
They are so absurdly off. Earth's circumference in miles is 24,901. 438,000 kilometers is 272,000 miles.
Well, they
that
don't
is an
just
order of magnitude off the circumference of the Earth.
Okay, if you remember the map, they show it loops back around itself and hits all like the major landmarks.
Yeah, I don't know if it
doesn't
could get that long though.
It's a real squiggly.
It doesn't
track.
just go straight around the like equator or something.
That said, it's definitely not more than 10 times the circumference.
Well, yeah, you'd have to circle the Earth 10 times, I think.
So
am I doing the math right?
Hey, real quick, Brandon, can you double check my math here? How many hours are there in a year?
I know how many minutes there are. I know where you're going with this, Josh. It's just I don't know how many hours there are in a year.
Yeah.
8,760.
Thanks, Rent.
Okay, so 8,760 hours in a year.
In a year. In a standard year, not a leap year.
And how many kilometers is this?
438,000.
438,000 divided that by 8,760. They're going 50 kilometers an hour.
On average.
That's not that fast.
That is really slow.
Listen. Okay, listen. Trains have to go real slow around corners.
That's like 30 miles an hour.
They're going really slow around those bends, but they're going real fast on the straights.
But they have to fucking like break through this ice too that's on the track.
That's on the straights. You can go fast on
I
that
just
part.
cannot fathom how their average speed is 30 miles an hour.
Oh, goodness. Because it seemed like they were like 300 miles an hour. Like they're really going.
Actually, if you think about it, like, if you remember all the times they looked out the window, they weren't really going that fast past the scenery.
But it's a train that like plows through ice.
Yeah, on the straights. They hit that part of the track. It's like, all right, there's some ice coming up. Hit the... it's not gas pedal, but you know, like hit the steam or whatever. It's I guess this
Put in another child.
Have the child scoop out some more goop.
throw in another child. We gotta book it.
Yeah. What happens if there's ice on a curve?
Well, the curves aren't made near ice flows, I guess. I don't know, man.
Oh gosh.
I mean, that said, they hit like 3 things of ice on the straight, and this is a normal thing for them. Like, they explained hitting the ice is how they get their water. They hit those ice things, and they almost derailed every single time. Like, it showed us the underside of the train, and it was coming off of the tracks every time they hit the ice. It is a miracle that this thing lasted 18 years.
How do they deal with leap years? They cross that bridge to signify a new year.
They don't count leap years.
They probably just don't even consider the
Yeah.
the concept of a leap year.
They only consider time when they're sticking someone's arm out the train as punishment.
So,
Yeah. So that was Snowpiercer. I guess they got the name because the train pierces the snow or the ice like
really?
a few times, and that's the name of the movie.
I mean, as far as movie names go, it's good. It's catchy.
Yeah.
I guess it was such a small portion of the movie. Anyway, this has been Snowpiercer.
Final thoughts.
We always skip over that.
So final thoughts. I feel like I've made pretty clear. It's a movie. It's okay.
Yeah, listen, it's not my favorite movie we've ever watched here. it had some good parts. It had some potential. I feel like I'm more protective of this movie now because I've had to defend it from your nitpicking, and I hold you personally responsible for this.
I think I understand why it got the funding and why it was made into a movie, but the end result was not great.
Yeah.
So what is that? Like, there's a TV show, right? Is that a spin-off?
I have no idea.
Let me look it up.
I know we were like closing out, but I gotta know, like, what's happening in that? Is it another train?
Okay, first off, it started in 2020, so they are 2 seasons in.
Wow.
Oh, wow, they
that
waited
felt
a
like
while.
it was so much longer ago.
David Diggs is in it.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, good for him for getting work, I guess. Yeah, it's...
Oh, it is. We didn't mention this at all. This is entirely based on a French graphic novel from 1982.
That's French. Explains everything.
It's French?
Yes.
Of all the languages, I don't think French was one of them.
It might have been one of the translated languages.
Maybe I just missed it.
But yeah, I wouldn't have guessed French, considering that, like, the director and a lot of the producers are Korean.
Yeah.
And, oh, another thing we never mentioned, the security guy is Korean and doesn't speak English, and they just have these, like, weird voice boxes that they use to communicate with each other.
Yeah, something they definitely did not have in 2012.
Yeah, but also only sometimes. Like, when he first starts talking, they're, like, talking through the translator, and then after a while, he is just talking in Korean with subtitles, and everyone is talking in English, and no one's waiting for the translator bot. They're just talking.
So, the show is set in 2026.
Oh, it's a prequel.
Which is only 7 years after the world got frozen. The train consists of 1,001 carriages and circles the globe 2.7 times per year.
Is that what?
In the show. Maybe that is something that happens in...
Is it a different train?
No, it's entirely the same thing. It specifically says it's based on the movie and the comic.
Maybe they realized the math was really shit.
I
so they
feel like that's what happened.
We have to go faster.
Faster, must go faster. So 2.7 times? That's an awkward number.
The constant motion of the train provides energy and prevents the passengers from freezing? Okay.
Why not the engine that they call sacred and is just magic?
Well, that's just propaganda.
But yeah, there's been 2 seasons of 10 episodes each.
What's the plot?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. See, I can't get plot because it'd be episode by episode type plot.
I'm not that worried about it.
I'm
I'm
not
never
that
going to
invested.
watch
I kind
this.
of want to see David Diggs, though.
Nope.
Yeah, he's cool.
I'm good.
Can we just watch like a compilation of his scenes? I think we could piece together the context from there.
So it seems like I'm briefly reading through episodes. It seems like this isn't like a prequel. It seems like this is just a retelling.
It just happens earlier.
Yeah. It says in the second episode, the leaders of the rebellion are put into stasis while a mother's arm is frozen off as punishment.
Wait, they're put into stasis?
Yeah.
Like-
hold on.
Oh wait, they have stasis ability?
I think it means their plans are put into stasis. Like
Okay.
they're planning the revolution, but they stop because this mother's arm is being frozen off.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, I mean, they did mention
I don't
in
know.
the movie that there was like an earlier rebellion that
Yeah.
wasn't like those seven people who just jumped off and froze immediately. So maybe this is that. I don't remember what it was called.
2 people get married and they get to move up to the second class?
What? But just because they got married?
I don't. That's just what this says. Till and Jinju marry, and Till is moved to second class.
Oh, only Till.
Oh, so that's the separation that we saw of the violinist old dude.
yeah.
Why is it a weird AU where everything is similar but different? I didn't come here for the Snowpiercer multiverse of madness. What is happening? Snowpiercer what if?
I want to watch this show now.
I don't. But if they're going 2.7 times a year, which by the way, doesn't having it be some odd, like not odd, but like a non-integer amount It
Yeah.
means that they can't keep time or can't keep yearly counts by the bridge location anymore.
Yeah, that's dumb. Why didn't they just make it 2?
Why didn't they make it 3? They're closer to 3. Why 2.7?
I mean, the writers.
That's what I mean. Like, if it was like, oh, well, we want it to be faster, 2.7 brings it up to about like 80 miles an hour, which is like highway speed, which kind of makes more sense. But I don't know, it would have been like 90 or 100 miles an hour if you did 3 times.
But then it wouldn't make sense that, like, those 7 people are able to jump off of a moving train and survive long enough to walk over there and freeze to death.
No, they specifically said that they tried to stop the train and then they got off.
Yeah, but they didn't succeed at stopping it.
Yeah,
they
but they
got off because they failed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they said they got off because they slowed it down and then got off.
I don't think that was the case.
I don't remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure they said that they slowed the engine down and then got off because the only way out is that door that's in the very front.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that they got to the engine and either slowed or turned it off and then got out.
I mean, the door to the engine's also, like, super locked. So so I think it makes more sense they got there. They're like, well, we can't get to the engine, but there's this door we can just get off.
Either way, but I mean, still, even at 30 miles an hour, you're not just jumping off.
Yeah, better chance than 100.
It's fair.
So it seems like they try to make Wilford out to be a good person. I've been reading just episode descriptions this whole time. And at one point, the Snowpiercer, like, stops and people are freezing to death. And Wilford is like, hey, we need to save these people and get the train running again.
I mean,
Interesting.
his end goal was the, continuance of humanity. It was just via shitty means.
And yeah, it is revealed at the very... So there are, I'm assuming, only 2 seasons, because it's revealed at the end that they attach to a computer, and the data reveals several areas of the Earth that are warming, and so they don't have to be on the train anymore.
Huh.
So it's just a retelling of the story. It's not a prequel.
Interesting.
Yeah. They
Well-
just did a fun little what if.
Guess what I'm never gonna watch.
Well, there's probably a lot of things.
Anyway, this has been Snowpiercer. I'm Josh.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Brandon.
Good night, everybody.
Remember to follow us on YouTube.
No, it's too late. It's too late. You already cut to the end. Go.
and
Hit the button.
and Apple Podcasts.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah. Where else? That's what I thought. We're also on Spotify.